All right, welcome back. We about to go ahead and go through slide 76 to 139, starting with today's bell ringer question that you can see posted in Canvas. I ask you what the final solution is. And the final solution is, just to make the screen large, policy of genocide that involved the deliberate and systemic or systematic killing of the Jewish population in Europe. And it was based on this disbelief, or it was based on the belief of a not very scientifically based idea of the Aryans being superior people, and that the purity of the master race must be preserved. And so, we kind of, well, okay, I'll go back over this. Like, the pink triangle is second only to the rainbow as the symbol of the support for sexual diversity. It got its start in Nazi Germany. The Nazis categorized people in concentration camps with colored triangles. And for gay men, those triangles were pink. And also larger than triangles, marking other groups. This was so that the gays could be spotted in a distance and singled out for more abuse. Minecraft creator is anti-Semitic. Marcus Pearson, the creator of the popular video game Minecraft, is a sexist and a racist. Speaking more on his racism, the villager in the Minecraft universe, if you will, are based on the stereotypes of hedonistic Jews. Jewish people have a stereotype of having larger nose, having a big nose, and then they walk around with their arms crossed, and also on the game, they only help each other. You cannot receive help from them. And so it's like, this very stereotypical, and those type of stereotypes help people because it's not always hurts people because they're not always entirely based in truth. So Hitler's hatred went beyond Jews. He, felt that there was people that was unworthy or inferior or enemies of the state, um, and this included gypsies, Slavs, Jehovah's Witnesses, blacks, Chinese, homosexual, handicapped, mentally ill, and even the mentally deficient. And you had Jewish ghettos in Poland. That you know that popularly now ghettos are usually refers to impoverished African American communities. However, it would first be brought into the 20th century with the Jewish communities that they were forced to live in Poland. And so even though the word has origins that go further back than that during the Reconquista phase in world history, where they was trying to reconquer Spain and the rest of the Iberian Peninsula from the Muslims and the Jews that had been relocated there. So anyway, factories were built alongside the ghettos where people were forced to work for German industry. Many of these Jews were then transferred to concentration camps or labor camps deep within Poland. So you had the final stage. Hitler's program of genocide against Jews took place primarily in 6 Nazi death camps located in Poland. The final stage began early 1942. The Germans used poison gas to more quickly exterminate the Jewish population. Each camp had huge gas chambers that could kill as many as 12,000 people per day. So some of these images are going to be disturbing, but of course they need to be shown. Like this particular image, it shows the entrance to Auschwitz, where it has the infamous motto, "Work makes one's free." Auschwitz being one of the larger concentration camps in Poland. If you are into Marvel movies, particularly the older X-Men films, I think the first X-Men film starts with showing the origin story of Magneto, or at least a little bit of his origin story, where he was his character is Jewish, and he was separated by his parents in 1944 at Auschwitz. And you can see like they have a replica of a gate that resembles the gate of Auschwitz, where young Magneto, as a young boy, used his power to try to stay with his parents, though they were taken to the concentration camps. He was taken somewhere else. Balkan Wall prisoners in nearby woods before their execution. They even executed Ukrainian women who were Jewish. 2 million children were killed during the Holocaust. I believe I went over this in yesterday's video lecture, but it's I can never not show it enough because we don't want these atrocities to happen again anywhere on Earth. And so, just gonna just go back over the images. So reading this poem I always thought was interesting. They came for the communists and I didn't speak out because I wasn't communist. And they came for the Jews and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a Jew. And they came for the trade unionists and I didn't speak out because I was not a trade unionist. And then they came for the Catholics and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a Catholic. But then they came for me. There was no one left to speak out for me. And that's by Pastor Martin Normailer. And again, just reiterating this idea that you should stand up for people who can't usually sometimes stand up for themselves because it easily can end up being you at some point in time. So never shall I forget the moments which they murdered my God, my soul, and turned my dreams to dust. Never. This is by Eli Wiesel, excuse me, camp survivor. And so the JDL, the Jewish Defense League, to which we learned about way back in Unit 5 or 6, at their establishment in Chicago, and then of course I think it spread to New York. To fight anti-Semitism, they ended up taking this phrase "never again" to have a remembrance, or at least a slogan for the Holocaust and the Holocaust survivors, for it to never happen again. More images. This guy being standing up for what he believed in. Clearly, there were people in Germany that did not agree with that. I believe I talked about Walter Rolfe yesterday. Him, you know, getting away with it, even though he created the mobile gas chamber. He ended up going to South America and living free, dying at the age of 77, even though he committed over 250,000 murders. Then you had the Inglorious Bastards, which is a great movie, and it's an entertaining movie. Of course, Hollywood has to make things attractive to tell a story, but it is based on a true story. Even some of the characters are based on real people, and it's worth the watch. So Leon Bass was a World War II hero that liberated the first set of Jews from Buchenwald concentration camp. Um, and you had Milton S.J. Wright. We talked about him yesterday. He was an African American academic born in Georgia that earned his PhD in Germany in 1932. He is said to be the only Black man to have ever had a conversation in person with Hitler. And I think that's where we left off yesterday. So I'll just start here. And of course, remember, everything that's green is what you write. Hitler's views on, you get the title and what's green. Hitler's views on Black Americans. Don't you think your people are destined perpetually to be slaves of one kind or another? Yes, your people are a hopeless lot. I don't hate them. I pity the poor devils. And so we started another section. America moved towards war using the cash and carry provision that allowed nations to buy United States arms and transport them on their own ships. We're getting closer to this. The Axis threat that rises, the Axis powers was Germany, Italy, and Japan. FDR runs for a third term and wins in 1940, which was unprecedented at the time because no other president had either ran for more than two times, and won, that is, or even served 3 terms. He won a landslide throughout the United States as a Democrat. The Land Lease Act, or the Land Lease Plan anyway, which meant for the United States to lend or lease arms to nations whose defense was vital to America. United States supports Stalin. So we were now going against we began to go against Germany initially anyway, as far as supporting our allies. But as USSR got their treaty broken, what was it, the Rome-Berlin Axis, the non-aggression pact that they had between each other, Hitler broke it. And so now FDR is sending Lend-Lease supplies to Russia. He don't want to fight on two ocean front. And so, not naturally that he's going to support Russia to support the Eastern Front, while he hopes that Great Britain and France at this time can hold their own, or at least Great Britain for that matter. And so he okayed for the U.S. Navy to attack German U-boats in self-defense. And then the Atlantic Charter, where we left off yesterday, late in 1941, FDR and Great Britain Prime Minister Winston Churchill met secretly and agreed on a series of goals for the war. Those goals actually led to what is now known as the United Nations. You might even want to make a side note or underline that yourself in your notes, maybe even take it now. So interesting stuff. Winston Churchill is regarded as one of the greatest wartime leaders in the 20th century. As prime minister, he rallied the British people during the Second World War and led the country from the brink of defeat to victory. Crazy fact about him is that he liked to parade around his office naked. Both FDR and his son Elliot had run-ins with naked Churchill. In Elliot's case, Churchill had specifically requested to meet with him. He walked into Churchill's office to find him standing completely naked with a cigar in his mouth, dictating a letter to his male secretary. Yeah, so Japan attacks the United States, Pearl Harbor. Get the title, get what's green. Japan launched a attack on a Navy Army base, which is in Hawaii. Japan had been expanding in Asia since the late 1930s. And so, Asia being a closer Asian nation, excuse me, Hawaii being closer to Asia, they wanted to take over that strategic location that the United States from Queen Lily Luciani, back in the stage of imperialism or the earlier stage of American imperialism. So, just got to be careful with, I don't want to use like, bad first. I don't want to use phrases that aren't historical or at least academic, but what goes around comes around. And that's all I'll say. I'm not saying that anybody deserves violence, but when you're at war, well, here you are. And so early in the morning of December 7th, 1941, Japan bombed the largest American naval base, Pearl Harbor. Underline, highlight, put a star next to it, in Hawaii. This event forced the United States into World War II. Notice that it is in red. You need to write it as well because it is a key point and a turning point of the United. Now the United States is in the war. This is the one major event that forced us to sign a declaration of war against Japan. The attack kills 2,403 and wounds 1,178. United States finally declares war. The surprise raid on Pearl Harbor by 180 Japanese planes sank or damaged 21 ships and 300 planes. The losses constituted more than the United States Navy suffered in all World War One. The next day, FDR addressed Congress. He said, yesterday, December 7th, 1941, is a date which will live in infamy. The United States declared war on Japan 3 days later, Japan and Italy. So now we're in this thing. Dory Miller. He was the first Black recipient of the Naval Cross and a nominee for the Medal of Honor. He helped carry wounded sailors to safety during Pearl Harbor. He then manned an anti-aircraft gun, and despite no prior training in gunnery, he shot down 4 to 6 enemy Japanese planes. Women Auxiliary Corps. So the women, not only did minorities play a role, but women played a role as well. The Army Chief of Staff General George Marshall pushed for the formation of the Women Auxiliary Corps, or the WAAC. Under this program, women worked in non-combat roles such as nurses, ambulance drivers, radio operators, and pilots. uh, Christina Skarbek. She was a spy for the Jewish heritage. She went by the name Christine Granville. She worked for the British, the French, and the Polish. The James Bond girls are based off of her character, or at least based on her in real life. She undertook many successful missions and using her language skills, powers of persuasion, and sheer courage to save countless lives. She also was Britain's longest serving female agent. Then you also have probably seen this image before, the Rosie the Riveter, propaganda to encourage women to take factory jobs in the defense industry. They worked on planes, missiles, guns, and boats. Yes, babe. All right, Norma Jane Morrison. You probably know her as Marilyn Monroe. She worked in the defense industry making airplanes. She was orphaned as a child. She is said to have been a double agent for the KGB, a Russian secret service spy, which is why she had those relationships with the Kennedys during the Cold War. But that's probably the image that you know her for. She was naturally a redhead. Mobilization of scientists. So 1941, FDR created the Office of Scientific Research and Development, the OSRD, to bring scientists into the war. Their focus was on radar and sonar to locate submarines. Also, the scientists worked on penicillin and pesticides like DDT that's still used today, sometimes illegally. SS Gulf America. Just in case you ever wondered if the actual war reached American soil, maybe not American soil, but it definitely reached American waters. This was the USS Gulf America was an American steam tanker. A German U-boat sunk her in Jacksonville, Florida in 1942. 5 men were killed from the torpedo blast. 14 men died. And this is right here in our state of Florida. So you had the Manhattan Project, which I don't know if you all seen the movie Oppenheimer, but it's based on this event, or at least the development of this. The most important achievement of the OSRD was the secret development of the atomic bomb. Immigrants Einstein wrote to FDR warning him that the Germans were attempting to develop such a weapon. The code used to describe American efforts to build the bomb was called the Manhattan Project. So for you SpongeBob watchers, SpongeBob SquarePants has a bizarre character, has bizarre characters. SpongeBob is talking square sea sponge who lives in a pineapple under the sea, has a meowing pet snail, and works in a restaurant owned by a crab. It all takes place on a seafloor beneath Bikini Atoll, the site of the underwater atomic test back in 1940. What if there are mutants caused by nuclear testing? We know that the creator of SpongeBob was actually a marine biologist. He would doodle these things based on what he observed from the sea life that was being changed, if you will, quote unquote, by the radiation from the radiation from the bombs. His name is Stephen Hellenberg, the creator of StunBot study marine biology at Orange County Marine Institute. Perhaps this is why he knows about the Bikini Atoll. The inhabitants of Bikini Bottom are mutants because of the nuclear radiation. So, War Production Board, the title get was green. To ensure the troops had ample resources, FDR created the WPB. This is much like what happened during World War One with the War Industry Board. The WPB decided which companies would convert to wartime production and how to best allocate raw materials to those industries. The collection drives, the WPB organized, to collect scrap metals, tin cans, paper, rags, cooking fat, anything. Households had set allocations for anything that they could save for the soldiers. You had the Battle of Stalingrad. You know, I'm not a big battle type of teacher. However, this war had battles that really changed the direction of what the world could become. They may even ask about these events on the state test, such as the Battle of Stalingrad. Hitler wanted to wipe Stalingrad, Russia out. That's where this battle was in Russia, a major industrial center. In the summer of 1942, the Germans took the offensive in the southern Soviet Union. By the winter of 1943, the Allies began to see victories on land as well as sea. The first great turning point of the war was the Battle of Stalingrad. When we were able to stop them, when we were able to stop Germany from invading Russia, we knew that we had the upper hand. So why we won that battle? Well, for weeks the Germans had pressed in Stalingrad. The winter had set in, and they had the wrong uniforms on, so many of them got cold and sick. Just like World War One ended with the flu pandemic, many of the Germans invading Russia was not prepared for the weather, and they died. So here's an interesting image: Russian spy laughing through his execution in Finland by a German Nazi. They even had to take out dogs because people couldn't take care of them. It was very sad. Tuskegee Airmen. Among the brave men who fought in Italy were pilots of the all-black 99th Squadron of the Tuskegee Airmen, also known as the Red Tails. The pilots made numerous effective airstrikes against Germany and won 2 distinguished unit citations. Here's a group of them in North Africa, getting ready to take flight. The original Black Panthers, not the one from the Marvel Comics, but this is where the Marvel comic character gets its name, the 761st Tank Battalion, nicknamed the Black Panther for their logo. And then, of course, if you know anything about the Civil Rights Movement, this is where the Civil Rights Organization, the more radical one, the Black Panthers, kind of took their imagery from. There was a predominantly Black unit, but they did have other minorities in it. They fought in Germany and in France. Jackie Robinson was one of their most rewarded fighters. He was a Black Panther. So A. Philip Randolph, this is where we're going to end today. This is slide 139. He was born in Crescent City, Florida. We already know about him being a labor union leader for the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters that, had African Americans working in the train industries and getting equal pay, or at least trying to unionize themselves. But he also helped pass the integration laws for the military. We learned about A. Philip Randolph way back in Unit 5. Now we're in Unit 11, and we're still not done talking about him. He was one of the great Floridians, and which the order was the Executive Order of 8802. So I'll explain this very briefly now before we go. So he calls up with the soon to be president, because of unfortunate event of FDR passing, was Harry Truman. And he calls up Truman and he says, "Hey man, you need to really integrate the military and integrate the military jobs." And so Truman hangs up the phone, doesn't want to listen. To make a long story short, with the technology of three-way, he calls Truman back, and he has like Chicago's NAACP branch on. Hey, if Chicago, are you all ready to come to March on Washington this following morning? Chicago says, yes, we got 5 buses ready. Then he hangs up the phone. He calls back Truman, and he has another person on the line. He says, "Hey, New York, how many of you all got ready to come on?" New York replies, "We got about 10 buses ready to come. Just give us the green light. We're gonna be at the March on Washington in the front lawn of Washington, D.C., of the White House. Just let me know when to go." He hangs up the phone again. By the third phone call, Truman says, "Hey, stop the buses from coming. We don't want all those people in the front lawn of the White House. I'll pass the order." And that very week, he passed the Executive Order 8802, integrating the military. That was the first March on Washington. That never happened. But A. Philip Randolph was also pivotal in organizing the March on Washington that actually did happen in 1963. We'll talk about that when we get there. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Learn something.